First order of business is the minutes of the past meeting. Any additions or changes?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is claims. I think everyone had a chance to look at the claims, got it in your email. We have claims totaling $308,372.55. Any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Application for operator's license for the period of 12/6/11 to 6/30/13. We have Dustin Holman, Melissa Reichart, Suzanne Rohde, and Kelsey Rhea.
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And to consider the denial of operator license for Tara Lynn Schroeder. Chief Jensen has recommended the violation. Is Tara here tonight? Any,
I'll move to approve the denial.
okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the denial?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Review and consider approval of revised employee handbook. Where do we want to start, Mr. Willie?
If there's any specific questions at all that you have, or questions on what the effort was made to, since the collective bargaining agreements with the public works and clericals employees, if they recertify, will strictly be able to negotiate over wages. So everything else is no longer covered by a collective bargaining agreement. So we needed to incorporate some of those things into the employee handbook. Before pretty much just covered the non-represented employees. So we tried to blend the two together. That was the goal here. Any of the changes were in the markup copy as changes. There were a couple of policy changes, if you will, that the mayor had discussed with me over time that we tried to implement. So.
How about page 14, please?
The discipline, this is the discipline policy that you approved a couple months ago.
Right.
That came from the state, or from the Wells office, I believe.
Well, you said it was a combination of several,
right.
from like the Towns Association, the League, and Weld Riley's office.
So,
We do not place an employee on administrative leave pending an internal. It says, employee discipline includes all levels of progressive discipline, but shall not include the following items.
That is to keep it from being grieved. That's
Okay.
not, it's a definitional question. That will not, yes, you can put someone on administrative leave
but you can't grieve it.
pending an internal investigation.
Oh,
but the
okay, for a
employee
grievance.
cannot
Okay,
grieve it.
gotcha. All right,
It's not considered discipline.
all right. Thank you. Had a couple more. We'll get to them in just a second here, and let anybody else. Page 20, longevity. Each full-time, this is something that I assume has been negotiated over the years at the time. That's why we have it.
It's then, it also, the non-represented, I mean, Nancy, has this been in place since you've been here, the longevity?
Yeah.
So 20 plus years. I know Mary mentioned it to me today when she came in and talked to me. One option, if you would so choose, I mean, yes, in theory, you could eliminate this, or the other option would be you could set a certain date and say any employee hired after this date would no longer be eligible for longevity. Might be another option.
I don't know what, anybody else has any comments or thoughts about that? It's not a huge dollar amount, but
Just, the idea behind the handbook is not to incorporate all contractual,
Right.
all contractual provisions. The whole point of the change in the law was to give management more flexibility, and so you can discuss these things and decide to do something different. And that's really up to the council.
That's $24 a year, basically,
And then times the number of years you've been working.
times the number of years.
so if you've been here.
So it's
30
it's maxed out at 30 years. So depending on how long the employee, it could be anywhere from $24 to $720, and it's paid every 2 weeks, spread out over the year.
Is it It's not paid that way now.
Yes, it's paid what some of,
Because I'm seeing some lump sums that
Here,
came
What,
through.
what that is in the union contract, they're allowed, we put the money in, we pay them, whatever the amount is. We pull it back out as a deduction, and then they get a lump sum check at the end of the year. They have the option of doing that now.
Okay. 'Cause
And
we
that,
saw
and
some
that's
of those
being,
come through on the
correct, and
claims.
those are, the non-represented, that was removed from the employee handbook a few years ago for the non-represented, so they're not allowed to do that anymore. This would further it by the Public Works and Clerical will no longer have that option. It's kind of a pain. I mean, because we have to deduct it back out, and then we have to issue individual checks to everybody. I don't know what the history behind it was, if it was a November, Christmas, I don't know what the history is on it. But we've been trying to slowly but surely, get rid of it.
I mean, you could just say you want to look at it further in terms of probably the future, incorporating it into the regular salary scheme. That's one option, to give employees a chance to plan for possible changes or to just get an idea of what people's salaries are, including this.
Do we have an idea what the total is, the annual total?
Well, you've got 80 employees, maybe average 300, so that's 24,000, is that what it is? Yeah, 24,000. I mean, that's just guessing, 300 is kind of in the middle, and we have about 80 employees that are eligible.
Since this council that I've been on, we've really taken a business attitude towards just about everything when it comes to money and maintaining our budget levels. I'd hate to see us start turning over employees and rehiring and doing all this. If it's a minimal fee of $2 per month and so forth, I'm not in favor of discontinuing it if anybody's suggesting that, because it's at least something we can give and say, hey, you're doing a good job, thanks for sticking around. It's the least we could do. I mean, they've been going through a lot of the budget process, and they're getting the short end of the stick, a lot of our employees.
But I'm trying to figure out, are we rewarding someone for staying here? I mean, versus doing a good job?
I think that's basically what it is.
Basically,
We're just
that's
saying,
what it is,
we want you
yes.
to stay here, and so we're gonna give you a bonus for staying here.
But it's
You're
strictly
good, you're big on
talking,
bonuses, aren't you?
but strictly talking numbers though, Al.
Excuse me?
Strictly talking numbers though, are we gonna
Yep.
sit there and retrain and restart and retrain and restart and, the revolving door?
No, I just brought it up because, is somebody gonna leave because they aren't gonna get $720? Do
Exactly.
you think we're gonna have mass exodus from the employee ranks?
That's not what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to think outside of the box and play devil's advocate about at least providing an incentive for employees that are doing a good job and want to stay around. They've been through thick and thin so far,
Yep.
and you certainly can agree to disagree with me.
Sure. Well, I'm just saying, I would rather say, I'd rather say, let's increase your salary by $700 rather than,
I'd like to see us somehow have a program to get rid of this and either put it into the regular salary or do something else with it, but I don't particularly like the incentive for just staying here.
okay.
I would agree.
But I don't think.
I don't know how to-
I'm not in favor of this particular moment taking it out only because the employees.
Well, and this can be changed at any
Right.
council meeting, it's not an ordinance, not,
Okay.
so I mean, if that's something you'd like me to check into in
Yep.
January,
I'd
February,
like
or for maybe for 2013, and see what other municipalities are doing,
Yeah.
Sure.
and then we could address it at that time.
And I
Is that-
really don't think it does what's intended to do. I mean,
Yep.
I don't think it's really making people stay here.
You okay with that, Randy? Just leave it in and,
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, Rich and I will never agree on anything anyway, so.
it's a good start. Page 23. We've added
I agree with you
three
basically in
holidays.
content.
You've added you've added a full holiday, 2 half holidays, but you've taken away 3 floating holidays. Right now, the employees, the way they get, holidays listed here, right now, Good Friday is a half a day, day after Thanksgiving is a half a day. The proposal is to make them full days. I'm sorry, New Year's Eve. Day after Thanksgiving is not so we're adding, in effect, you're adding 2 days,
2 days of.
but they're losing 3 floating holidays. That's no longer will be in there. Right now, they get essentially 3 more vacation days. So they're actually losing a day or the city's gaining a day, depending on how you want to look at it.
Okay.
Okay. Then to review the, one, I have about two more things, and then everybody else can get their 2 cents worth. So in essence, we're taking away 3 and we're giving 2, so it's a loss of 1 day.
For the
Okay.
employees, yes.
Page 25, the 20 years, 5 weeks vacation, is that kind of the norm? I mean, I know this is, that seems awful generous,
I
but
would say yes for municipalities, but again, I can check on, that's another thing I can
How about-
certainly check on.
Can we compare it to the rest of the private sector? Can we? I mean, I don't know how easy it is.
I mean, I guess I can contact, I would have to, yeah, I mean, I guess I can contact individual.
there's a deal through Eau Claire, the employment, regional employment, I'm trying to think what it's called. It gives you all that average wages and
All right.
vacation time and benefits.
Okay, I can certainly check on that.
Okay,
This is consistent with what I'm used to.
is it pretty, after, okay? And I think the biggest one, I think we have to, in my opinion, we have to look at is on page
Should be on the next page.
28.
The sick leave?
Yep, the accumulation of sick leave.
Right now, the way it works is employees, you have 600 hours in your sick leave bank. And then there's also anything over, if you accumulate over 600 hours, it goes into this reserve. The intent of the reserve is catastrophic illness, whatever. Right now, there's no maximum limit on that. If an employee retires, not leaves employment, but files for retirement with Wisconsin Retirement, those 600 hours are converted over to sick leave credits. And they can use them, for however long they last.
How can they use them?
They can use them to
For
remain on the city's insurance. They cannot get cash. They can use them to remain on the city's insurance. If they go on as a rider onto their spouse's insurance, dental insurance, just some type of insurance. But,
Right.
for example, we either reimburse, they have to show us that it's being spent on insurance, or if they stay on our plan, we just keep track of where they're at. So it's not a cash payout where they just get a check and can do whatever.
Well, it buys them insurance.
It buys them insurance, right. And then the other option they have is if they so choose, they can take 2/3 of that value, and this was negotiated a few years ago, and put it into their HRA. So how many ever hours, that was done a few years ago with the contracts. The year that we made all the changes with the health insurance and,
So they can get cash, they can go into their HRA.
well, it goes in their HRA, 2/3 of the value can go into the HRA. And that was, when we made this change over
Yep.
to the.
Thoughts?
So what's proposed here, and this was based on a suggestion Alan made, is that we cap it at 900 hours. So it'd be the 600 in the regular sick leave, a reserve of 300. Those that have more than 900 right now, would keep it. But if they ever got below 900, for some reason took it, the max they could have would be 900. So basically, if somebody already has that sick leave in there, they don't accumulate anymore.
It's very generous. I mean, most places have gone to use it or lose it type policies and don't let you carry over anywhere near this amount of sick leave. The problem I've always had with it is it's accrued at one pay rate and it's paid out at another.
Correct.
So you start accruing it the day you start, and 30 years later,
Whatever
you
your
cash it
annual
out at whatever
That's
rate
right.
you're at. And that to me it's a flaw. But beyond that, I think it's very generous.
I think being able to have that sick leave for a catastrophic illness is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think what we do with it after the fact, again, if you're making $10 an hour at the beginning and $30 at the end, we pay it out at 30.
Well, it just seems to me that it's not doing what it was intended to do. Sick leave is intended to compensate people when they're sick, and this is becoming a bank account. And in that case, I don't see it doing what it's intended to do. I mean,
And
it's changed totally into
I
something.
gave Al today, it ranges, we have employees with 3 hours of sick leave, and we have a couple of them, do you have that?
No, I didn't bring it. It's sitting on
It
my
seemed to me
desk.
that, if I remember right, there were 9 of them that
Had over 900.
900 hours, 8 of them that had between 6 and 9, and it was pretty spread out, but we have a lot of, I think there were 23 employees that had less than 300 hours.
You know,
And a lot of them have been here for quite a while, so some people don't ever use it.
Right.
Some people use it a lot.
And I should correct what I said. It's not just a use it or lose it. Many companies, they give you time off, and it's for sick pay, or for, sick days, or for vacation days.
And we talked about that,
I
and we
mean,
even came up.
that's kind of a step further.
We came up with a proposal for that, but the difficulty is that, and I'm not saying we couldn't do something like that when we're negotiating with the police, but I didn't want to have two different programs going. So I did put a proposal to Al to do exactly that. There would no longer be sick leave and vacation, it would strictly be paid time off, PTO. So that I do have a proposal
Yeah.
ready to go, but I was my concern was implementing this and then have the police not agreeing to it, and then we're running two different systems, and that this would seem to be complicated. But
Randy, what do you think of that? Any thoughts, comments? Okay,
So the proposal would be that it would be capped at 900 hours now instead of having, but the most right now they get paid out is 600 for when they retire. And we,
that would continue, correct? The cap for payout is 600?
yes. And it's been 600 with the union since I've been here, and probably 6-7 years ago, the non-represented were at 300.
We
And they
raised it.
raised it to 600 because there was an inequity there.
I guess it's something I'd like us
Okay.
Sure.
to look at.
And it might be something we can discuss
Yeah.
Sure.
during negotiations too, just to,
Yep.
okay.
That's all I had. Anyone else?
And again, this, if something comes up, something doesn't work, we overlook something, it can be changed at any time. That's kind of a nice thing.
And this isn't, I just want to say, it's not I'm not trying to just be difficult and, make things, burdensome for employees. It's a matter of what are taxpayers receiving on their jobs? They're paying taxes, but they get certain benefits. And I think it's hard sometimes for taxpayers to look at government employees who are getting much more generous benefit packages, and meanwhile, people in the private sector are losing their jobs, pay cuts, et cetera. So I'm kind of looking at it from that standpoint.
So, do we have an ability to find, and I don't want to say find another day? Can we put a floating holiday in to make it even?
You can do whatever you want.
Because
I
we
mean-
took 3 away and
Yep.
we gave them 2 back.
Correct. I don't know that we need to, we could pick any of the federal holidays. The courthouse is closed on several of those federal holidays, but that would be whether you want us to find another holiday to be closed on, or we just return one floating holiday and that would just.
I
that would
think it'd
even
be
it out.
more advantageable for everybody to have a floating holiday. Then they can
Leave
use
the
it.
one, okay.
I don't know, did anybody think that?
And then that would be even? Okay.
Yep.
That's, can't think anybody's gonna argue with that.
Well,
Yep.
why would we want to,
Right.
I didn't see anything too unusual in that particular group of days off.
And we actually are open quite a bit more than
Yep.
a lot of them are, because we always laugh, because you'll hear on the news on President's Day, all local offices are closed, and we get phone calls, you're open, and there we are. All right,
Anything
so we're
else on
adding a
this?
floater.
No, I gave my comments to Devin earlier, and just had commented on the department vehicles being used for travel.
Okay,
And I know we had talked about that when we talked about rental vehicles.
So
being
that was one of
used.
the things on your table this evening,
Yeah.
does
just
that look okay then, Lori? What was
Yeah,
that? Okay.
just that we're not using city vehicles that are very valuable to travel
And I did-
unnecessarily.
Did tell Lori today, I'm still playing phone tag with Enterprise, because it has to come from some corporate place about getting the, and this will take effect the first of the year, so we'll
Okay.
make sure I'll get something in place by the first of the year.
do we have a motion to approve the revised employee handbook?
Motion to approve the revised employee handbook.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Devin, good job. Please, review quotes received for snow plowing municipality-owned parking lots in downtown area. Mr. Zuli. Or, Lori, do you want to, Tom looks like he's ready.
Come on up.
the Public Works Committee approved this proposal. This was to contract out the snow plowing for municipal parking lots downtown to help our staff get some of the plowing routes done a little faster and more efficient. Currently, we use 2 front-end loaders with our parking lots, and it takes 2 to 4 hours to get these parking lots plowed depending on the depth of the snow. If we could contract the plowing out, we could get back to the cul-de-sacs a little faster. That's where we've had our most complaints for the last several years. Actually, I think we have 72 cul-de-sacs in the city of Hudson. A lot of them in Mary's district. So it was just basically to free up some of our equipment to get to other areas a little faster.
Which bid did you have? 17 all scapes for 1710?
Yep.
Yeah. That was a low bid. There was some discussion in the, during the Public Works meeting about equipment to make sure that each contractor had the proper equipment. Mr. Westfall said that he actually does not own a front-end loader. That was one of our requirements, that they had a front-end loader and a skidder to push the snow up. And he said that he actually leases or rents the front-end loader. And as part, I didn't catch up with him this afternoon, but Catherine, in a discussion this afternoon, said that it'd probably be a good idea that we'd get a copy of his lease agreement or whatever he has for his rental unit before.
Just to make sure he's got it in place for the
Yep.
season and can
Same
comply
thing with the
with
insurance. You want to make a copy of that before you
Yes,
starts.
yep. The other thing that came out of the meeting was after we interviewed all three or four of the people, the contractors, one gentleman said that he was going to include adjacent parking lots.
Sidewalks.
Sidewalks.
Adjacent sidewalks to the parking lots. And that was not in the bid, but I think Randy, Mr. Morissette said that, asked Kyle Westfall if, from Allscapes, if he would include that in his bid, and he agreed to that. So not only are we getting this parking lots plowed, but we're going to get the adjacent sidewalks shoveled when we have 2 inches of snow or more. So that's going to be a big benefit also to us.
We asked in Public Works that there be a performance clause added to the contract so that, you know, if we get a month or 2 into the winter and we're really not happy with the way the parking lots are being taken care of, that we have some recourse, so.
And we did add that to non-performance clause in there.
Yep. Okay.
Does that look, Catherine, does that look all right to you, that portion?
Page 3.
For G?
Yeah, I thought we had, well, I was looking at 2B, actually. The agreement may be terminated by the city during the agreement period without cause and without penalty, just by providing written notice. So I think
That kinda covers it.
that's what we
Okay.
need.
Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the contract.
I'll
Sir.
second it.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Tom, as long as you're there, boat launch fees proposal from the DNR.
This was brought to our attention from an unhappy person who uses our boat launch and said that we were non-compliant with some of the DNR regulations. So after a review, we looked at our records and we thought we were probably grandfathered in with the current system. It's a 3-tier system where we charge residents, city residents one charge, state residents another charge, and non-residents another charge. According to the current DNR regulations, that's not acceptable. So after some conversations with Bruce Neeb from the DNR and Catherine, he said that he would allow us to run the program or the cost this year the current way, and that we'd have to reapply or for boat launch fees for next year, change them for next year, 2012.
To be
in
Consistent
compliance.
with the current DNR regulations.
And a lot of it's based on the rate, the current rate of the daily pass that's charged
Sure.
to state parks. And that's $7. And then we can, whatever we charge the residents, we can charge non-residents up to 150% of that rate.
Okay. So, staff was $5 for city and non-resident $7.50 was your recommendation, and committee recommended $7 for city residents and $10.50 for non-residents?
That's what came out of the Public Works Committee.
And part of that was a result of, Tom, you talked about some of the fees that are charged at other launches.
We did look at a lot of the current fees, and most of them are in between, $10 and $15 range, with some over 20. So we are.
We're considerably lower than
Well,
some.
we have an awfully upgraded boat launch. We've got restrooms, we've got parking facilities, we've got a very nice little boat launch. It's not just a,
And that was part of actually the application. You can actually get credit or charge more if you have attendants on duty, if you do have restrooms, and
What was the problem? What was the problem?
with the complaint. He was a non-resident, and he felt that
It was more than
Apparently-
150%.
Yeah, he was an out-of-state
He was from Minnesota.
resident.
Yeah, he was out of state.
out-of-state resident.
resident.
And he didn't want to pay what we have? What was
He
it
didn't- he
at?
thought it was unfair for the city residents to pay $3 and non-out-of-state people to pay the $10. So yeah,
and the $7 and $10.50 is consistent with some of the other boat launches in the area.
actually lower,
It's still lower.
Still lower than
still
the
lower.
other boat launches in the area.
The
So actually,
10.50, how in the world are you gonna enforce 10? I mean, are they gonna have 50 cents in there when they put the money in, the cash? Does that seem, are we gonna have to put, do our attendants don't take the money, do they? Or do they?
Yes, they do. On Saturdays and Sundays, we have attendance from, 7 to 2 or 3 on weekends.
Okay.
And then, otherwise, they'd have to put their money in the envelopes or, yeah, it is kind of a inconvenience.
The 50 cents? Or the,
But that's just the way it worked out. We can do anything you care, I guess, if you'd like to lower it or raise
And we
it.
could do
I don't wanna-
7,
We can't raise it.
7 and 10.
7 and
You
10.
can do 10.
Yeah, that's fine. I would. make
no,
that-
I just think from the standpoint, you're trying to find 50 cents in your car to put it in the, it doesn't matter to me. 10.50 is fine.
I'll make a motion that we approve it at 7 for city residents and $10 for non-city residents.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, establish of a stormwater utility ordinance number 22-11. Who wants to be the person that brings this,
Probably should be
explains
Neil.
it?
But it should be Neil.
I think.
Neil?
I'll take,
Neil has done most of the research on this.
I'll take a start at it. We had, based upon the committee's recommendation, I've been working with Catherine on drafting an ordinance. And I think the bulk of what is in here is pretty consistent with the committee recommendations, and is also consistent with most language you see in other storm ordinances. I think the one issue that Catherine and I talked about at length related to the recommendation that we adopt a flat fee. I know Catherine has expressed some concerns about whether I think fees in Wisconsin have to be equitable, or there's.
Well, and fair and reasonable, and it's got to be based on something, and different properties generate different stormwater. And so a flat fee may not be considered fair and reasonable because it has no relation to the stormwater, the differences in properties.
Output.
Yeah.
So how do you judge that, or is there a measurement that you use?
Well, yeah, impervious surface area. And, I mean, I acknowledge or understand that the city hasn't done a detailed study at this point, but I think some sort of, there might be something in the Bonestro study or some sort of multiple of this REU based on perhaps initially size of property, commercial and industrial, or if there's, because the size of property is probably going to bear some relationship to the size of impervious surface, at least for commercial and industrial. I mean, that's really up to, I think the city will need to do some sort of analysis on impervious surface.
And I think, the Bonestra study does address, gives a number in terms of what is a residential equivalent unit and makes some recommendations to that effect. When we had originally looked at it as staff, the proposal was for on and beyond residential and multifamily. For commercial, industrial, and institutional properties, the recommendation was to probably have a tier of rates, try to break it into 3 tiers based upon size of property.
Right.
After further discussions, one of the things we talked about is anything over a certain size, because I think over 2 acres, we're only dealing with about, 50 properties roughly, that the impervious area of those can be, approximated fairly easily. And that perhaps, if you set up, 1 tier for the smallest properties, and then over a certain size, we could calculate the impervious area and create an REU.
Because they're fewer in number.
Because they're fewer in number, exactly.
Didn't we also say an REU would be over an acre? Once it was 1 acre would be an REU? No?
I don't recall that conversation.
No? Okay, I thought I read that somewhere.
No, because it's supposed to
No,
bear
it's
some,
Residential
yeah,
equivalent unit.
right,
And I
to
think
the
the bonus
residential.
study addresses about, I think it's about 3,000 square feet is what they said the impervious area on a typical residential lot would be. So that would be roof area, garage area,
Yeah,
sidewalks, driveway, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah, actually it's 4,400, and then they say there's about 8 of those per acre, just under 8. Can I interrupt at this point? Because I've given this some more thought since Public Works met, and actually I'm much more in favor of a tiered structure. I know we had talked about going with a flat fee when we met at Public Works, but I think a tiered structure with the base rate being $750 per quarter, I think it's a more reasonable way to go. It's lower than the $10 per quarter we had talked about at Public Works for a residential home. But I think it does shift a little bit more of the burden to the commercial and industrial properties that do have a larger impervious surface area. So, there's probably no perfect formula. I don't think we have to make this overly complicated. As you said, as the property sizes get bigger, there's fewer of them. Once it's determined, we have the numbers set. It's not going to be an ongoing recalculation process. But that would be my inclination right now, is to go with a tiered fee, starting at $750 per quarter. But we talked about schools, churches.
Right, all the institutionals would be included. The way the ordinance is written, that the properties exempted from this would be undeveloped properties, public road rights of way, and parks.
So a church, let's use a church or a school. Let's use our high school, for example, the parking lot they have up there. How would we classify them?
Depending upon what tiers we used, if we went and measured each of those, we could probably very easily, using the measuring tools off the county's website, come up with a reasonable approximation, probably within plus or minus 5%, very easily, of what the impervious area would be.
And then we take that times what? If you have 45,000 or
Well, if
you
one
have an acre of,
if one REU is 4375, you would
Right.
just divide it by that
Correct.
to get the number of REUs.
okay, so let's assume we have 45,000, an acre. We have an acre of impervious,
Which would be the equivalent of 10 REUs, roughly.
So
It would be
10 REU,
$75.
and what are we, $75 a quarter? 50 to $300 bucks. Huh?
Right.
And, okay, I'm just trying to put it into,
Right.
Sure.
Right, to how it's actually gonna work.
so let's go to multifamily first. Are we gonna try and do that separately too, or are we gonna go by number of units?
The recommendation from Bonastra, there really had two recommendations. They had one that I had me puzzled a little bit because they talked about owner-occupied multifamily and non-owner-occupied multifamily.
Duplexes is what they're expecting.
Right, well, duplexes, no, they did duplexes too.
Okay,
Typically, single-family and duplexes would be charged 1 REU.
okay,
Multifamily, in most instances, they're either charged 1 REU per unit or 1/2 an REU per unit.
so
The
if you
theory
have,
being that those are smaller and have less impervious area as a group.
so let's use a 20-unit apartment building at, one, at $7, that's 140, right? 7 times 20, $140 a quarter,
Right,
times 4. Right?
right.
Okay. How many,
That's using 1 REU, right?
yep,
But I
That would
think
be
the
using one.
proposal was
It's used 1/2,
1/2.
Per unit, right?
right.
So
So
it'd be
it'd
10
be
REUs.
So
So
it'd be
it'd be
$75.
10 REUs.
Yeah, or if you look at it, if the other way of looking at it is $375 per unit per quarter. So it'd be, $15 per unit per year.
per year, yep, okay, $300, is that right?
Right.
Can we step back just a little bit?
Yep.
And talk about why we're doing this?
Sure.
So people don't think we're just looking for a new way to raise revenue?
Sure. There are a couple reasons, and, some of these Tom may be able to help, but I had worked, and I think there's a budget in here that I sat down and worked with Tom. You really have two things going on. Number one, you have ongoing maintenance of our system. And I think, you know better than I do, the expenditures that you've made on an emergency basis for repairs. Some of this would be to have an ongoing inventory of what's out there and inspection of what's out there. Also would provide for regular additional street sweeping, and a program to provide for more of a replacement cycle for both catch basins and manholes. Those are a couple of the big things. The other thing that would be provided in here is because the city is over 10,000 people per the 2010 census, we will now be required to comply with the Federal Clean Water Act and have to get a stormwater discharge permit from the DNR. As a part of that, we will have to do some educational requirements. There are certain criteria that you have to meet, and it says, how are you going to address these various areas? One of those is educational, to try to tell your residents, what are the things that you can do to help improve water quality. But there are also some testing requirements too, and then, potentially there are requirements where we have to document the extent to which we've cleaned, our discharges into both Lake Malibu and into the St. Croix River.
Those regulations probably 2013, 12, they've been delayed, haven't they? Tom?
I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
Can I just add one?
Sure.
Thing? And I think Neil touched on most of the things that I was going to mention, but some of the needs were estimated, and it's a little hard to kind of guess at what we have out there. But if we would establish this, one of the things I would prioritize would be an inventory. And once we get an idea of exactly what we have, and then we can make some probably better, we have a better idea of what we're looking at as far as repairs and things. Last Friday, Lori and I went to some storm ponds that we in-house recently did, and it's kind of eye-opening thing that it's hard to believe how much sediment is built up in some of our drains and things like that when you're talking, 3-4 feet of sand where the water's supposed to go out. So there's definitely a need that we, have to get some ongoing programs with this stormwater, so. Like I said, I think the first priority would be, somehow divide the city up into groups or thirds or whatever and try to get a citywide inventory and see exactly what we do have.
Okay. Comments or any other information?
I guess part of what I'm hoping is that we can get ahead of some of these situations before they become emergencies and be a little bit more proactive about addressing where there are deficiencies in the infrastructure and take care of it before it gets more expensive.
What do we have, Tom, last year? 2 or 3 failures of stormwater or
Structure-wise, manholes and catch basins.
catch basins? We had, what, 2 failures or 3?
A couple catch basins and one manhole that we, really couldn't do in-house. On our, this is city maintenance program, I think we repaired 10 or so in-house. And then what we tried to do over the last few years, whenever we do like a mill and overlay project, because we're gonna get, maybe 7 to 10 years before we have to resurface that road again. We try to get manholes and catch basins repaired during those projects also.
Okay.
I had been in
Rich?
favor of a sunset clause where this utility fee would be stopped, but based on the information we have, we don't really know what the cost of repairing the stormwater system is going to be, and so the sunset clause is probably not appropriate at this time. But I think if we ever get to a point where we kind of know what we need, I'd still like to see us eventually put a stop to the stormwater utility after we know what our costs are.
Maybe then monitor, or put those into an operating, take it out of our operating budget.
Mhm.
Okay. Randy, what's your thoughts on this?
What did we budget for?
Pardon?
At what number did we budget?
This year, we left the personnel costs in there. Was it 28 or 30?
The number that was moved over was $23,700. That was taken out of the general fund, so right now that is not even budgeted, it's nowhere.
Anywhere, right. And we left the salaries in there because that was split.
And at a tiered 750 rate, it would work? Well, obviously it would.
At a tiered 750 rate, we would not quite get all the money that is in the kind of the pro forma budget that Tom and I worked on, but relatively close.
Well, relatively close, but don't we want it balanced?
How about if we wait and see if we run some scenarios so that we can, we don't have to decide on the
No, we
dollar.
don't.
No,
And if-
the most
if-
we were talking about first reading, because you need to put in the
Rates.
the structure, and you'll need to adopt
And I think,
rates.
and I think that's a good thought, that if we have some guidance on rate, we can hone in a little bit better in terms of what kind of revenues would be generated. But without knowing where that discussion was going, you could run, countless scenarios and not be sure that we're on point.
Well, I would propose then, and I'd make a motion, that we look at a tiered structure with the starting rate of $750 per quarter per REU. And see what that works out to be. And so could we do a first reading with that?
Yeah, I mean, it will look different from this, but actually what will end up happening is, you'll have an ordinance and you'll have a fee or rate resolution.
Well, if we're still working on this, it doesn't go to council, right?
Well, that's up to
Recommend.
you. If you don't want to do a first reading, I mean, council would have to do the first reading. If you want to just work on it and bring it back with what you're actually proposing, with the fee structure you're actually proposing, then you wouldn't recommend a first reading.
I guess I'd like there to be a first reading, if at all possible.
I agree.
I just want to understand why we're changing from our flat rate original proposal to a tiered proposal. I guess I'm
Let me-
not quite sure I
I've got
totally
a
follow it
motion on the
yet.
floor. Is there a second? I suppose I should get a second. I'll second it so we can discuss. Okay.
I'm just looking for clarification on why we're moving from a flat-based rate to a tiered rate. And I know there's concern about the impervious area, and maybe that's the reason for the tiered rate, but the flat rate seems to be so much cleaner and clearer.
Cleaner, but is
Well,
it equitable, I
Yeah,
guess?
it's not a reasonable, fair and equitable and reasonable rate if it doesn't bear some relationship to the output the properties generate. Otherwise, a small, piece of property is paying the same as a piece of property that has a large amount of impervious surface and is generating a lot of stormwater runoff.
But I'll
And
argue
that's-
with you, Catherine, that the house that's been here 100 years versus the house that's been here 3 years has not developed as much or caused as much wear and tear on our system. So there's no equity there. With a brand-new house, it may be running off the water, but the usage of that stormwater system has been utilized for 100 years and caused it to wear out faster. So should we charge older homes more? I mean, I know we're trying to make it fair, and I think that's kind of it's always bothered me that we've had requirements for parking lots that are never used except for maybe once or twice a year, and now we're gonna come back to them and say, and now we're gonna make you pay for requiring you to build these parking lots as big as we require them. It just seems, there's just something wrong with that whole philosophy. in my
Well,
opinion.
what do you mean never used? I mean.
Well, look at the Walmart lot, let's use that for example. 98% of the time it sits empty.
But it's still-
Because we need this amount, the city has said we need this much parking on your busiest day, or the Walmart parking lot. Or Target, take any big major retailer that we've had. Those parking lots sit empty most of the time, but we require them to do that. And now we're gonna say to them, because you're doing all this runoff after we require you to build these, now you gotta pay more.
Well, they're paying for the effect those parking lots have on
Yeah.
the stormwater runoff. If there's a problem with requiring too much impervious surface, that's the regulation you need to look at. But setting this up as a utility is a little, then the rates need to reflect the usage of that system. That's what you're saying to property owners. You are using this system, it benefits you. Different properties generate different amounts of stormwater, and the system is built based on the stormwater.
Yeah.
So to have a flat fee
Well,
and make a homeowner pay the same as a property that generates a lot of stormwater just does not,
Well,
it's just
I
not
can
fair, and
understand,
it's
I can
not
understand residential.
reasonable.
I can understand residential not paying the same as commercial, or commercial not paying the same as residential. So I'm okay with that, separating commercial aspect out of the residential. But for residential, I think a flat fee is reasonable, and we're not charging an absorbent amount of money in this fee. It's a
That's
10
what we're talking,
Yeah.
for residential, the base rate is REU, based on
Okay.
typical single-family residential.
So that would be based on flat rate, REU.
Right, but the commercial and industrial will be multiples of that, or
Okay,
fractions
I
of
thought
that.
we were arguing about trying to charge residentials different rates.
No.
No, we have,
I missed the
Okay.
point here, okay.
okay.
I mean, we're all looking at this, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So if we did the tiered structure at 750, it would generate 232,000 annually. We budgeted 260, which Tom and Dennis both seem to think is a little low, so we're still not quite there, but I think it's a reasonable start.
Any other comments?
I'm not quite sure we need first reading yet. I think it should go back and come back.
Okay. We have a
I
motion.
I agree with the whole principle, but there's more work to be done.
I guess the purpose of the first reading is to go back and, what we're recommending approval, we've got a motion on the floor to recommend the 750 for RU
Yep, with a tiered structure.
with the tiered structure. And Randy, you're saying you want something more?
Well, I would like to see the honed-in number closer to a balanced budget, but I also want to make sure we're all very clear before we present it forward.
Okay.
Is it reasonable that we have those numbers on the 19th? If we met?
I think so.
We can do that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Good work on that. That's a toughie. Budget for sewer utility. Neil, you want to walk us through that? Is there anything we should be, all we're doing is reviewing the,
Right, you're reviewing the 2012 budget request. I think if you look to sewer utility, one of the things in there, if you look at just the total revenues versus expenditures, there is a deficit. However, there was the project that was improved for the, and I think I have it noted in the expenditures for the biogas project. That, and then there's also, that will count, those funds are already in place in the future facilities fund. There's also $280,000 primarily dedicated towards the purchase of new control systems. Those funds are already in place in the equipment replacement fund. So where you look at the deficit, if you look at the budget of, $1,367,000, you add back non-cash expenditures of $249,000, add back the capital expenditures, and you really see that the quote operation is, the revenues from the operation are a positive $167,000.
any questions anyone have on that?
The only question I had was the personnel charges are up 14%.
Group hospitalization.
It's
I mean, it's
from
the same
hospital-
number of people, I believe, Devin.
Okay, it's hospitalization.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this budget?
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is for the parking utility.
Parking utility, there's a revision that was passed out based upon the revenues. Again, if you look at the utility itself, the net including depreciation is a $30,000. I may even have I think I have the older one.
Here's the new one.
There's a new one.
Yep.
The net is actually $85,000 net income. Add back depreciation, so the cash flow would be $110,000. I think the one thing to note in here that when we have looked at the parking fines, those have been, I don't know, I guess the best way to describe it would be somewhat of a roller coaster in terms of, in parking tickets, where they have varied from about $110,000 a year to $65,000. So the budget that was set is kind of right in the middle, and so where we're showing, a positive cash flow there, wherever they are in the cycle, they'll still be positive. But the expenditures are pretty much based upon what we had this year, with the exception of the $45,000 that was expended for the lakefront parking lot.
Yep. What I did was took 11 months, and spread it out, extrapolated out to 12 months and reduced it a little for parking meters because of the free parking. So that's where the numbers came from for this year.
The other thing is our percentage, one of the 30% of the gross revenue.
Yep. And I think 24,587 or something is from April 1st to the end of November has been segregated over into that.
So we have a fund that we're for future parking lot.
And there was also one payment in lieu of parking that we received. So we're just under $30,000 in that account as of November 30th. And that's 8 months worth.
Okay.
7 months.
Any comments, thoughts?
Move to approve.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we're at, gotta hustle up here, folks. EMS. Lori, you have anything, or Neil?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's a pretty reasonable projection. If you look at it, this includes the funds for the repayment to the city that were loaned for the last ambulance purchase of $24,000, it's pretty much a break-even budget on a cash flow basis.
Are collections continuing to improve, not improve, but they're at the same level?
They're
okay?
They're pretty much at their same level. I mean, some of that is dependent on Medicare reimbursement rates that are not controllable, but they continue to hang around in that 48 to 50% range.
Okay,
If we can pay back more on the ambulance sooner, we plan to.
Okay.
So the 24,000 is sort of a minimum amount we'll pay.
is there a motion to
I'll
approve
move to
that budget?
approve that budget.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
How about the other two, we wait until full council, if that's okay? Do you think, maybe we can do 11, the squad car? Do you want to do the squad car? We have time? What do you want to do? What's your preference,
Try.
guys,
We can try.
ladies and gentlemen? Let's try, squad car. Chief Jensen?
Council, if you take a look at your issue sheet, you'll see that we sent out a letter to 3 car dealerships, Ewald Ford, which has the state contract, and then 2 local Ford dealerships, River Valley Ford out of Baldwin and Hudson Ford, requesting 2 quotes for squad cars. They were sent all same spec sheets. They sent them in by December 1st. We opened them, myself and Administrator Willie opened them up on the morning of December 2nd, and as you can see, the bids from each one of the dealerships are there. What I'm recommending is that we take the bid from River Valley Ford for $26,248 for the SUV. Our current Explorer right now is a 1998, which is starting to fall apart on us, so it's time to replace that unit so that we can use it in the wintertime.
Any other questions?
What are you gonna paint this?
No, it's going to be a black unit. We're going to do it just like we do with the black and whites. We'll put an overlay of white on it so it'll look just like our...
The cheap way? The way that some of these squad cars have been done? That they're not
we're not doing a black and white. Black and white is more expensive. And it's harder to sell retail. Once we're done with, when we go to sell it, all we have to do is take that overlay off the top of it and just sell it as a black vehicle.
Where's River Valley Ford out of?
Baldwin. Used to be Anderson Ford.
Is that delivered here now then? Do we have to send people out to go pick it up?
Well, we'd have to send somebody to, they would charge us a delivery charge if we had to go and have them delivered. We're only talking 20 miles.
Just so you are aware, we did receive correspondence today from Hudson Ford, indicating that they made an error in their bid. It was received today, and it was, information was out there in the public. It was received today, and we just indicated that, but we'd need direction. She asked if there was a way to resubmit their bid, but
So did their bid come in before?
their bid came in on Thursday.
No, did their new bid come in?
They did not
yet?
submit a new
Okay.
bid because I did not tell them to do that,
Yeah.
because I wasn't sure what the direction of the council would be on it, but the difficulty is the information was out there.
Right,
Not questioning that an error was
Right.
made, but
I
But that, I
we-
left that up to you.
Proposals were public,
yeah.
but
Yep.
by the time.
I thought we were gonna have delivered at Hudson. Again, same thing with Ewald. If we have to send, if we were to, let's assume they were the low bid by $5, we'd have to send, what, 2 patrol officers to go there, plus overtime?
No, Ewald would have that delivered. There would be a delivery charge of about $120.
Okay, is there a delivery charge with this River Valley Ford?
With the River Valley Ford, no, they didn't put a delivery charge on it.
So they will deliver it to us, or do we have to go pick them up?
I would have to ask. I don't know.
Okay. So going forward, when we do a bid, it's delivered to the city here at the police department, I hope?
Well, I didn't think that Baldwin was that far away that we needed a delivery charge, but I can do that in the
But if we
future.
send 2 police officers out there, we have 2 police officers off the street during that time period for an hour. And there's absolutely no reason to do that when you can have them delivered here, in my opinion. I don't think we should take 2 police officers off the street to go pick up a squad car 20 miles away. That's my opinion.
I agree.
Okay.
So.
We have a motion to approve that?
Well, so what if we were to ask them to give us a cost delivered and ask
Well,
Hudson Ford to
it's-
do the same?
The process has been, I mean, everything's been public now. You can't really negotiate with.
Okay.
Well, I'd recommend,
Letters.
do we have a recommendation to accept this bid for 26,248? I'll make the motion to approve the River Valley Ford bid for 26,248.
I'll second that.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, I think we're gonna delay the last item, if that's okay with everyone, for full council. Is there a motion to adjourn? First of all, is there any other things you'd like to see on finance for next time?
Nope, move to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Were those longevity